Welcome to the ECE Classroom podcast with your host, Susie Beghin, inspiring early childhood educators every day. Hello and welcome to the ECE Classroom. My name is Susie Beghin and I'm the host of the show. This is our last episode for 2024. And I thought it would be fun to do a holiday episode. So I'm wearing my holiday shirt and I'm going to be doing something different today. Usually I have guests on the show, but today it's just me answering questions from early childhood educators. So I canvassed around my daycares and asked all my early educators, what are your pressing questions that you'd like me to answer on the podcast? And that is what is going to guide our show today. So we're going to start with our first series of questions, all dealing with probably the question I get the most from early childhood educators. And it's all in dealing with how to deal with challenging behaviors in the classroom. I know that we all struggle with this. So I'm going to try and give a little bit of advice and some support to you because I know it's difficult to deal with challenging behaviors, especially on a daily basis. So let's start with our first question from our educators, and it's to do with aggressive behavior. So the first question is, how do you help a child with aggressive behavior? And how do you protect yourselves against a child who may be aggressive? So this is an interesting question. And I know that children obviously can have tantrums at times and children can be aggressive. So let's talk about some strategies. I have some tips for you and things you can do to eliminate the risk for yourself or reduce the risk for yourself. So children become dysregulated for many reasons. It's our job as educators to help them develop those self-regulation skills. They can't do it on their own. They cannot regulate on their own. They need us to teach them skills and co-regulate with them until they can develop those self-regulation skills. So let's start with what should you do if you come across a child who's being aggressive. First thing is remain as calm as possible. You don't want to take this personally. It's not personal. The child is going through something difficult. So allow yourself to disengage emotionally. Now I know that's difficult, but you're going to have to try. So what you can do is take deep breaths if you need to calm yourself down. The more calm you are, the better chance that you can have an impact on calming the child down as well. Second step is call your room partner. So it's important when you're dealing with an aggressive child that you get your room partner involved. And that doesn't mean that both of you try to help the child to calm down. No, one of you has to take the lead, but the other person can manage the other children in the room. And it kind of gives the other room partner a heads up to say, hey, I'm going to be dealing with this child for the next little while. You're in charge of the other children in the room. So it's just kind of like to let the other person, it's a communication strategy to let the other person know what's happening. And perhaps one of you is better with this child. They would take the lead with the child and the other person would look after the rest of the children. Okay, so the first thing your room partner is going to do is remove any other children from interacting with this aggressive child. So there's other children in the same area. The other educator will take these other children and move them to another part of the room to protect them and keep them from getting hurt. Second thing you're going to do is you're not going to try to talk to this child. Basically, this child is not listening at this time. So they're only reacting to their stress. They're in the part of their brain where they're just reacting and they're not in the part of their brain where they're able to do any sort of reasoning. So you're not going to reason with them. All you're going to do is stand about 1 arm's length away from the child. Don't face the child because when you face the child, it's a little bit more confrontational. So stand kind of perpendicular to the child. So if the child is facing in a certain direction, you're going to stand on their side about 1 arm's length away. If the child strikes you or attempts to hit or kick you or bite you, you're going to grab a soft pillow or stuffed animal, whatever's close by, maybe even a blanket, and you're going to protect yourself with that so that the blows don't come at you. They're going to either hit the pillow or the blanket or the stuffed animal. If possible, you want to move with this child to that quiet area of your classroom, so that there's more access to these soft pillows and things like that. But also, just because the quiet area will help them to calm down a little bit better too. So if you can get them into the quiet area, that's what I would recommend. Now, what are you going to say to this child? You want to speak in about 1 or 2 word sentences. Okay. So you don't want long sentences because again, they're not listening. So just one word like stop or I'm here. So sometimes I hear educators say, you're okay. And I know that's meant to try and comfort the child, but the child is not okay. So you saying that doesn't help, I don't think. So instead say, I'm here for you, or I'm here, or just stop if they're doing something that's inappropriate. So you're just going to let it play out. When the aggressive behavior stops, you're going to offer some form of comfort, whether it's a stuffed animal, a pillow, a hug, whatever form of comfort you think that child would like. And this is the time when they're calm, you're going to talk to them about what happened. You're going to maybe find out what was the cause of their stress, what happened, and then try and reason with them through that problem solving. So another question that I received is about tantrums and whether or not we should stop a tantrum. And my answer to this is no. The more you try and stop a tantrum, the more it will persist. So basically, you just need to let it run its course. Again, the child needs to be in a safe space. So try to move them into a soft area, maybe with a carpet, so they don't hit their heads on the floor. Usually if they're thrashing around, you want them in a safe place with no other kids around. So basically just move them to that safe area as much as possible and let the tantrum ride its course. Again, you can offer words of encouragement like I'm here, things like that, just to let the child know that they're in a safe place with you. And again, try to use soothing tones of voice. Try not to be stressed or aggressive yourself, because that will only fuel the tantrum. So you want to just speak in calm, soft tones with the child until they're ready to have a conversation with you. Okay, so the next question I get in regards to challenging behaviors is about biting. So the question is how to manage a situation where a child is biting often and how to communicate with parents about that. Okay, so I have a whole series of videos on biting on YouTube, so I really recommend you check those out. It all talks about why do children bite and what to do about it. But let me give you a few tips here. So the first thing is you need to find out why the child is biting. So you need to be a bit of a detective here to figure out what's going on with this child that's causing this behavior. There is a reason behind it, and you need to find out why. So once you find out why, then you can figure out how to stop the behavior. So you can see if you don't know why it's happening, it's really hard to stop it from happening because you don't know what's going on. So once you figure out the why, again, refer to my YouTube series that talks all about why children bite, what are some of the common reasons, and then you can find the solution. So once you find the solution, you can start to develop strategies to help stop the biting. Okay, so until you find out why that child is biting, you're going to need to keep that child within arm's reach at all times. This means that you need to have a plan in place to make that happen. When we know that a child is biting often, we know it's going to happen again. So you need to have a plan to monitor that child more closely to prevent a bite from happening. That's the goal in the beginning, is to prevent it from happening again. And because we're monitoring more closely, that will also help us figure out what are the reasons for the biting, whether it's a communication issue, a sensory issue, or another issue. So the next part of that question was about talking to parents. So how do we talk to parents about biting? I know this can be a difficult topic and a difficult subject to bring up with parents. So the first thing you want to do is be careful with your language. You don't want to label this child as a biter, so you don't want to use that language. No one likes labels. And we need to show respect for this child, and we need to show empathy for the parent. However, we need to be open and honest with our communication with the parent. So we need to let them know exactly what's happening. So we can try to phrase our comments about what we see instead of a judgment about the child. So for example, you could say something like, I saw the child bite a friend on the hand when the child refused to hand over a toy. Now that's very objective. It's not subjective at all. I'm not saying anything about this child, only what I saw. You can ask questions about, does the child do this at home? Has the parent ever been bitten by the child? Let the parents know basically that you want to work with them to solve this problem. Believe me, the parents are embarrassed and they want to solve the problem too most of the time. So they will work with you. So think about this as a teaching moment and help the parents understand that this is a teaching moment as well. It's not a judging moment. We're not judging the child. This happens all the time in daycare and with children, especially under 4 years old. So remember to show empathy to the parent, to the child, because they won't be happy to hear this, and tell them that this happens frequently at this age and that you want to work with them on a solution to prevent and stop it from happening again. So I guess the next step is find a solution with the parent. Once you figure out what's going on and you've used your detective skills to figure out why the child is biting, you're going to work with the parent to find solutions. And if you can't find solutions with the parent, perhaps you can also refer this to a resource consultant that helps you within your center, and they can help you with more strategies. Okay, so the next question I got was about speech difficulties and how to help a child with speech difficulties to express themselves during a conflict. So the first thing you want to do is obviously model behavior for the child. Start with simple words, with actions like stop, maybe put up your hand and say stop. And this will help the child to defend themselves in a conflict. So you need to teach them the words they need to use when they're in a conflict, because their immediate reaction is going to go to physical, like pushing, hitting, biting. So you want to show them the words, you want to model it for them, and you want to show them the action. So for example, if someone is taking their toy away, you can teach them to say stop and hold up your hand like a stop sign. Often I hear teachers saying, use your words. Now, I have a bit of a pet peeve about that phrase because children generally don't know what use your words really means. And especially when they're in the middle of a conflict, that's not going to be helpful. They're not in the mode of using their words. So the child may be using physical means to defend themselves. They probably don't know what words to use to defend themselves. And that's why they're resorting to physical means. So it's best that you tell them the words that they should use and model it for them, just like I did in my example. Okay, the next question was about taking toys away. So the question is, what strategies can we use for toddlers who take toys away from others? So first of all, let's reset our expectations about toddlers. This is typical toddler behavior. Toddlers do not know how to share yet. And we should not be upset when we see them taking toys away from others. This is typical developmentally appropriate. We should expect it and treat it as a learning experience or a learning opportunity for that child. So developmentally, children at the toddler stage, they're still very self-centered and they don't yet have the capacity to have real empathy. In other words, they don't know or they don't care that someone else had that toy first. So what you can do to create harmony in the classroom is you can help them to develop that empathy by being consistent with your response. So I would say something like, I can see you want that toy, but your friend was playing with it. Oh no, look, your friend is sad that you took it away. Do you want to make your friend feel happy and give it back? Now, they might not want to, and that's okay, but you're starting the process of building that empathy and letting them realize that their action had a consequence. What they did made somebody else feel sad. So basically, you can try to redirect that child to another activity, or, either child redirect them and get them focused on something else to distract them, or you can provide multiples of that toy. So basically say, hey, you know what? Let's go find another toy exactly like that. I see that the other child took your toy away, something like that. So when there's no multiples of toys, what you can do is basically, again, talk to them about it. I know it's not easy to engage in conversation like this when you're in the middle of a conflict, but I think it's really worth it to invest the time to talk to children about empathy and what consequences their actions have, so that they can learn this. And if you're doing this on an ongoing basis, they are going to learn it eventually. So don't give up on that. And I would say don't take the toy away from the child who took the toy away just because you want to show them what it feels like, because then you're basically just showing them that it's okay to take a toy away because you've done it to them. So don't take it away. Just try to reason with them to give it back, or talk to them about how it made the other person feel. And then, try to comfort the child whose toy was taken away. Okay, so the next question is about inappropriate language. And this usually happens in the later preschool years where children are learning the language and they may come across some inappropriate words. So the question is, what to do when children are using inappropriate language in the classroom? So the first thing I would do is try to ignore it as much as possible. I would not call attention to these words or this language, because sometimes that is exactly what children want to do. They're trying to use the word maybe to get attention or maybe to get a reaction, and you're going to fulfill that desire by giving them attention. So basically what you really want to do is just ignore it if at all possible. Now, if you can't ignore it because they're continuing to do it and maybe they're influencing other children to say the same words, then you want to take this child aside and talk to them about it. You want to give them some one-on-one attention and basically just talk about the words. What do they mean? Does the child understand what they mean? Does the child understand that it's not an appropriate word to use in the classroom? Really reason with them. A lot of times children use these words because they've heard them somewhere else, maybe even in their own home. And they don't fully understand what they mean. They just know that they get a reaction when they use them. So you can talk about the words and you can talk about what appropriate words are good to use in the classroom and, that certain words are not appropriate to use in the classroom. I would definitely not shame the child who's using these words, and keep the conversation quiet between just you and this child. And don't involve others in the conversation. Try to do it privately so that it doesn't become a big issue for the classroom. So if this strategy doesn't work and they continue to use inappropriate language, I guess you can discuss it with the parent and work together with them on a strategy to get it to stop. Again, sometimes children like to use potty talk in particular because they think it's funny. So don't laugh. Just remind them that those words are for the bathroom only. Okay, and then the last question on dealing with challenging behavior is about new children in the classroom. The question is, how do you help new children settle into the classroom? I know it's very difficult when you have new children in your classroom. Just imagine how difficult it is for the child. Put yourself in their shoes. They're adjusting to a new classroom, a new teacher, a new group of friends. We need to be aware that children are in a new environment with new people and have some empathy for them because it's very scary for them. They're wondering if mom and dad has abandoned them, especially if they're very young. It's important to keep this in mind so we can empathize with them as we go through this process of integrating them into the classroom. So put yourself in the child's place and really understand them instead of just dismissing their crying because they're new. So this is the time when you really need to build trust with this child. You'll need to respond to their needs and their wants and really focus your attention on this child. They need some little bit of extra attention during this time when they're still new in the first few weeks. Basically, they need love. And it takes time to develop that trust. So don't be discouraged if they don't connect with you right away. It takes some time to build that bond and that connection, and it won't happen instantly. So I would suggest, after a few weeks and months, you should begin to develop that trust and that bond, and the crying should stop. There's a lot that parents can also do to help with the transition. So you might want to talk to the parents about what they can do. Refer parents to my YouTube videos about separation anxiety. I have a really good video that talks about how to handle separation anxiety from a parent's point of view, and give them strategies about how to transition into daycare. So parents are part of the process. You want to include them. Don't overlook them because they're also upset that their child is crying during those first few weeks. And they do have an important role to play to ensure that there's a smooth transition from home to daycare. Okay, so the next series of questions is all about dealing with parents. So this is probably the second most asked question, the first being challenging behaviors, and the second one being how to deal with parents. Because in this day and age, parents are very educated and they have certain demands, and sometimes it can be difficult to meet those demands. So let's start with the first question about lingering parents at drop-off time. So the question is, how do we let parents know that it's time to leave instead of lingering around to take care of the child in the classroom during drop-off? Okay, so first thing I want to say is it's nice that the parents feel comfortable and want to be involved in your classroom and want to stay with the child. However, we do know that they should not linger more than about 5 minutes because it is disruptive to the classroom and to the other children when they see a parent walking around. And it's usually a busy time during drop-off, so having more adults around also creates some safety considerations. So how do you encourage the parents to leave without being rude? And that's really the point. So here's some suggested phrases I would use. Things like, let's say goodbye to mom and dad so I can show you what we're doing in the class today. Or, so we can go to the washroom and wash our hands. And then I would take the child to an activity or to the washroom without the parent. And that kind of hopefully gives the parent the hint that it's time to go. Now, if they don't take the hint, the next thing you can do is probably get your supervisor involved, because you don't want to really have this kind of conversation with the parent. You want to keep things light with the parent. So maybe get your supervisor involved to come into the classroom, maybe at the time when the parent is dropping off. And maybe at that time, the supervisor can talk to the parent and just help the parent to understand that for safety considerations and because it's disruptive to the classroom, we really don't want parents to stick around for a long time at drop-off just because it's too many adults in the room. So just kind of softly encourage the parent to leave. Okay, so the next question is about parent communications. How do we keep parents satisfied, especially those who may appear to be very demanding and seem to be difficult to please? Definitely, I've come across parents like this before. So I would say parent communication is something that educators have to do every day, and it's something that you need to be consistent about. Sometimes you come across a parent who might be a little bit more demanding or feels like they're never satisfied. They have a lot of concerns and questions all the time. Perhaps they might even be quick to get angry with you, even for the smallest thing. So the best way I like to deal with a difficult situation like this is to shower the person with kindness. And I find it usually works. I go out of my way to show kindness by smiling, by giving positive encouragement, positive information, sharing observations about that child. I really go out of my way to talk to this parent and let them know that I'm on their side. And a lot of times this might be happening just because there's a trust issue there. They don't fully trust you. And so you got to help work on that relationship. You got to take ownership of the relationship and understand that, okay, they don't trust me right now for whatever reason. And again, it's not personal. It's just maybe something about them that they have a difficult time trusting people. So I'm going to really work on the relationship and build their trust. So when the parent is asking a question, I try to rephrase it back to them. So I let them know I fully understand what they're asking me. And then I respond with empathy and understanding. Most importantly, I want to empathize with their situation, with whatever it is they're telling me, and do whatever it is I can to gain their trust. At the end of the day, if they still can't trust me, then at least I know I've done all that I could to work on the relationship, and I continue to do so, and I don't give up. But the most important thing here is don't take it personally. It's not about you as a person. Just to deal with it in a very professional manner. So the next series of questions relates to the program and the curriculum. So the first question is about transitions. How to manage transitions with toddlers who are new to the classroom. Okay, so transitions to and from the classroom can be very difficult, especially for toddlers. So you want to make sure it's safe and smooth. So I usually have a procedure that I ask all my educators to follow, and I'm going to share that here. So first is transitions take place in small groups. So if your ratio is 1:5, so 1 teacher, 5 children, or 1 teacher, 8 children, you're going to transition 1 teacher with 5 kids, 1 teacher with 8 kids. And the reason you want to do that is you want to ensure that groups are small so that they're manageable. I find as soon as groups get a little bit bigger, they become more unmanageable. There's more children that could potentially have conflict. And then there's just more children to watch, especially when you're walking from one place to another. So before I would do a transition, I would always give a warning, and at least a 5-minute warning. Maybe it's a tidy up warning to say, we're going to tidy up in 5 minutes. I'm going to show both a verbal cue, so I'm going to say it out loud, and also a visual cue. I'm going to have something visual that I can show them, whether it's a picture or a sand timer or whatever it is that we use to show that it's time to tidy up. Next, I'm going to use a transition bin during the transition. So a transition bin is just a bin with some toys, some books, basically fidget toys, things like that, things that are going to keep their attention while they're waiting for other kids to get ready. So during a transition, usually we have to get dressed in outdoor clothing or get undressed. And so it's difficult for children to wait for other children to be ready when they're already finished. So having a transition bin just keeps their hands busy and keeps their mind engaged while they're waiting. So you always want to redirect the children to the transition bin. So if they're trying to wander off or if they're trying to, create conflict with another child, you're going to redirect them to the transition bin and give them some toys to engage with. And I really love the use of songs for transitions. Songs help to keep the children focused on you and engaged with you, especially songs that they like. So work on songs that they like. Counting songs are really good because you can use them for counting children as you're transitioning. And then again, with a new child during the transition, what I would do is make sure that child that's new is right beside me. So, older children or children who have been with me for a while will be further away from me, and newer children will be right next to me. So I can make sure I keep a close eye on them because they're still not familiar yet with the transition. And again, it takes a while to get used to the transitions and the routines. So I'm going to keep that child close to me until I'm confident that they know the transition well. Okay, so the next question is about messy play. How can we allow messy play and still ensure we can transition smoothly after that? Meaning that there's going to be probably a big mess to clean up. And how can we get parents on board to let children get messy? Okay, so I understand mess can be stressful for many people. I'm one of those people. I'm a person that doesn't particularly like mess. I like things organized. However, I know that messy play is important for children. It's beneficial for them. So how do we let it happen? How do we get over that fear of mess? I really think it's a mindset shift. So we need to tell ourselves to be okay with the mess and knowing that it's okay, we're going to clean it up eventually. We need to definitely understand the benefits of messy play for the children and allow them to get engaged in that mess. Next, we're going to pre-plan to contain the mess. So sometimes we're afraid of mess just because it's going to go everywhere. But if we're pre-planning, we can contain it. So for example, a messy activity can take place inside a sensory bin where we know that the mess will be contained inside that bin. Or we can lay out, a tarp or some kind of a blanket to contain a certain kind of mess. So again, depending on what it is, we can pre-plan to try and contain the mess. Next, we're going to ensure that we allocate enough time to tidy up. So if we're only allowing 5 minutes to tidy up a messy activity, it's probably not enough time. And then we're going to be stressed that we're running late. So maybe when we're doing this messy activity today, we're going to allow 10 minutes to tidy up. So we're going to allow a longer tidy up time. Work as a team in the classroom to clean up mess. It's no fun when there's one person who's always cleaning up messes. So let's take turns. However, if there's someone in your classroom who really loves to clean, and they really like to take that role on, then let them run with it and you can do something else. Now, the second part of that question was about parents. How can we get parents on board with this? Because a lot of times they might not want children's clothes to get dirty. So it can be tricky when you're dealing with a parent who doesn't like mess. This comes down basically to education of the parent. We need to educate parents on the benefits. Again, the same thing that we would do with ourselves. So if we're afraid of mess and parents are afraid of mess, we're going to educate them. We're going to let them know what are the benefits of messy play. We're going to go to online. I'm sure you'll find like some kind of tip sheet that says, what are the benefits of messy play? And that's probably something I'll create. Now that I think about it, I'm going to create that and put it on my website. What are the benefits of messy play? So parents can either redirect them to that website or print it out and hand it out, give it to them, so they can understand that messy play is beneficial and important and critical for their child's learning. Other thing you can do with parents is ask them to bring an extra set of clothes. So if they didn't want the clothes that they brought them in to get dirty, you can say, bring us some messy play clothes. We're going to put those clothes on when we're doing messy play, and we're going to take those clothes off when we're done with the messy play. So that basically will help them be okay that those particular clothes are their messy play clothes. Another thing you can do is take a video of the child when they're engaging in messy play and really show the parents how the child is learning and having fun and how that messy play was especially beneficial for them. Okay, the next question is about inclusion, inclusive programming. And the question is, how can we support kids to feel included? So basically, inclusion is all about belonging. Inclusion is about making sure that everyone feels like they belong. So how do we create a sense of belonging in the classroom is the real question. Ask yourself the question, do children feel like they belong here? And do they want to be here? And based on the answer to that question, you can then figure out what to do to create an inclusive program. Why do they not belong? Why do they not want to be here? Is there something about your environment maybe that turns them off? So what can you do to ensure that they want to be here? Do children feel heard? Are their wants and needs being met? Are their ideas being incorporated into programming? Are you fully capturing their interests? These are all ways that you can help children to feel included, regardless of their ability. So look at your environment, ensure it's suitable for all children. Are there any quiet places and noisy places that children can go to so that they can be separated from other children and where they feel safe? So look at your environment, look at how you're interacting with children, and that will help you to change either your program or your environment or your interactions to help children to feel included. Okay, so the last set of questions that I received are about team dynamics. So working within the team and team communications in the classroom. So the first question is about communicating with coworkers. How do you communicate with a coworker who you think is doing something incorrectly? Wow, that's a hard one. That's a really tricky question. So let's first state that this is if it's a minor issue. The answer to my question is if it's a minor issue, this is what you'll do. For major issues or concerns where safety of the children or safety of your own self is involved, you need to discuss that with management. Okay, so let's take that out of the equation. This is for minor things. Okay, so I think when we're talking to others, especially coworkers, it's about giving constructive feedback. And I like to use the word feedback instead of judgment. A lot of times we go into judgment mode. I myself am guilty of this and I'm working on it, but it's how to give feedback without passing judgment. So one way to do that is talk about what you see without judgment. For example, instead of saying, you were short with this child, which is a judgment, you could say, I saw that when you interrupted the child stopped talking. I know this wasn't your intention, but I wanted to help you and point it out to you in case you didn't see what happened. So this is a statement about what you saw instead of a judgment statement that makes the person feel bad. So most people are open to constructive criticism. I mean, some people are not even open to that, and that's okay. That's their character. And you'll have to work with that. But most people are open if you deal with it in a constructive manner. So let the other coworker know that you're trying to help them and you're not trying to criticize them. And that's the point of trying to phrase your feedback in a very positive way. Even when you are giving constructive feedback, some people still can't accept it, and that's okay. All you can do is ensure that you've given the feedback in a constructive manner and you stop there. You can't change people. The worst thing you can do is tell someone else about what you didn't like. That is basically gossip. And so you don't want to go around to somebody else to say, I don't like how this educator did this. That doesn't help that educator, and that just spreads gossip and rumors. And I'm sure you wouldn't like that done to you, so don't do it to others. because it will make the situation worse. Your relationship. How gossip works is it gets around, and eventually will get back around to that person who you talked about, and your relationship will suffer as a result. Okay, so next question is about teamwork. How can we encourage teamwork among staff with diverse energy, ability, ideas, and perspectives? So I think it takes a lot of respect to work as a team. We need to respect each other and what everyone brings to the classroom. Some people bring a higher energy, while others bring a sense of calm, and we need both of those things. So let's respect people and nurture what it is they're bringing. Some people bring more knowledge and experience, while others bring fresh new ideas. So again, let's nurture and really understand what people are bringing and encourage more of that. There are also diverse perspectives and ideas, and we need to respect all different ideas that people have. We need to have an environment where people feel comfortable to share their ideas, and they can only do that if they feel they're not being judged. So practice active listening when you listen to your coworkers, and listen to understand rather than listening to respond is a great way to practice active listening. The question also asks, how can we work as a team because there's so many differences among us? But I think that's actually a good thing. So I don't see that as a challenge. I see that as a positive. The fact that everyone is different and unique is what makes a great team. If you had everybody on the team who was exactly the same, that wouldn't work. Believe me, it would cause more conflict. You need people with different abilities, different energies, different skills, and different ways of thinking. And that's what makes a great team, is when you can take the best part of everyone and nurture that. So let's respect and celebrate our differences. That's what makes teamwork great. So the next question that I knew would come up is about burnout. Burnout is definitely something that early childhood educators deal with, mainly because of physical and mental exhaustion. The kind of work we do, because we're so passionate about it, we are prone to physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion, which leads to burnout. So how do you deal with it? The first thing I would say is remember why you like this job. Remember why you are an educator. What was your purpose? What was your why? Why are you in the field? Try to figure that out and remind yourself of that. I know that's difficult on some days, but those are the days when you really have to tap into that why. Next thing you can do is support your team members. That's a great way to deal with burnout. So if you see that somebody is not at their best today, maybe you put in extra effort that day because you have a little extra energy to give. And they will do the same for you on a day when you don't feel 100%. You can work on your self-regulation. A lot of times we enter into burnout because we didn't notice what was happening to our physical self and our mental self over time. So paying attention to yourself, paying attention to your body, responding, using stress management techniques when you feel stressed will help you to manage that stress so that it doesn't lead to burnout. So basically, burnout is when stress is consistent and unmanaged. Now, we all deal with stress every day in every role, in every profession. And I know that, teachers face a considerable amount of stress working with vulnerable society, with children in particular. So that is continued stress. So you need to find stress management techniques to help you manage that stress on a daily basis so it doesn't get out of control and turn into what we call burnout. So find the stress management technique that works for you. I also want to refer you to episode 1 of our podcast, our very first episode. We dealt with this issue of educator burnout, educator empowerment, and educator engagement. So if you haven't checked out episode 1, go back there. There's lots of strategies there on how to reconnect with your why, how to work as a team, all the different things I talked about today. Go into a lot more detail in that episode 1. Okay, and the last question that I received was about opening a daycare, believe it or not. So I got a question about myself. Did I face any challenges when I was opening my daycares, and what were they? And any advice for anybody who wants to open a daycare in the future? So I love to see people ambitious. So that's awesome. The answer to the first part of that question is yes. There were many, many challenges to opening a daycare. The daycare business is not for the faint-hearted. Believe me, there are a lot of stresses in the job. So if you think your job is stressful as a teacher, amplify that a little bit more when you're a daycare owner and responsible legally for these children. So your stress level just goes way up. You have so much responsibility for the children, but not just for the children. You have responsibility for your staff. You have responsibility for the families and the parents. You have responsibility to government agencies. So there's a lot of stress for sure. And with that responsibility obviously becomes, if you're passionate about what you do and you take it seriously, it can lead to stress as well. So one of my biggest challenges was how to deal with stress because it's constant and, I could easily burn out. For example, if a staff member calling in sick one day and trying to find a replacement at the last minute, the stress of a parent complaining about something, the stress of a child not engaged in the program, the stress of paying your bills, making sure you can have everything covered, the stress of ensuring you have a quality program. There's so many daily stresses in owning a business and particularly in opening a daycare business. So over the years, I really had to work on my stress level and learn how to deal with it constructively. And I do mention some of my stress management techniques in episode 1. So if you do want to go back to episode 1, you can hear more about what I learned about how to deal with stress and how to manage my stress so that it doesn't get out of control. Lastly, I believe when you're a daycare owner, you have to really develop a thick skin in order to deal with all the challenges that come your way on a daily basis and not to take anything personally. Okay, so my advice for anyone who wants to open a daycare is really evaluate why you want to do this. So look at your why reason. The fact that you love children is not enough. You need a bigger why reason. Why do you really want to do this? You need a really strong why to get you through all the difficult hardships that you will face along the way as a daycare owner. So I really encourage you that if you're interested and you have a strong why, go for it. And you can always reach out to me. I love to help and give advice on opening daycares. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, this last episode of 2024, our holiday episode. I hope you enjoyed this format of answering teacher questions. I hope you learned something, and I hope you can take something away to help you in your daily role as an educator. You are the heart of the system. I want to wish you love, good health, and happiness throughout this holiday season and throughout the next year. Thanks for tuning in to the ECE Classroom with Susie Beghin. For more information, you can visit our website at www.susiebeghin.com. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.